Who's the stupidest person you've ever met? And what story perfectly sums up their stupidity? So one night during high school, my friend and I got invited to a party. I didn't drive back then, so my friend picked me up. All went well on our way to the party. On the way back, however, he got pulled over. As we were pulling to the side of the road, I told him that I was going to pretend to be sleeping, since I was the passenger. Anyway, I hear the cop get out of his car, walk towards our car, stop at the window but doesn't say anything. I can feel the brightness of his flashlight, but I don't hear him or my friend say anything. After about what seemed like an eternity, I decided to open my eyes to see what's going on. That's when I see my friend, the guy who was driving, is pretending like he is sleeping too. I'm not really sure that that's going to reduce the amount of trouble you're in. The guy I went to high school with was at a party and asked the homeowner if he could have her tattoo kit. She obviously said no. He left and came back an hour later with a ski mask and demanded for the tattoo kit. Was arrested the next day. Can't make up that kind of stupidity. How did they know it was me? I had a mask on. This girl I used to work with before she got fired. One day she came to work with a broken arm and claimed her boyfriend pushed her during a fight and she fell. We all were super concerned for her until she came in a week later saying she stabbed her boyfriend in the hand during a fight to get back at him for breaking her arm. Then a few weeks later she told everyone that she was secretly trying to get pregnant because if she got pregnant her unemployed boyfriend would have to get a job to help pay rent. She got pregnant and her boyfriend immediately dumped her. Yeah, there's some interesting logic there. Hopefully she figures her life out eventually. I worked with a man named Roy. Roy had theories about how to live life. Roy-conomics. One day he turned to me and the other member of the crew and said, "You boys want to know how you get nice things? You go to the store and you finance everything. New furniture, new appliances, televisions, stereos, everything. Then you don't make any payments and you don't show up for your court date. They'll end up garnishing your wages, but they'll take way less than the payments would have been. Then, about a week later, you boys want to know how you buy a house? You apply for every credit card you can possibly get, you take out your entire balance in cash from all of them, and you use that for your down payment. Then you don't make any payments and you don't show up for your court date." I have a feeling this guy's credit score might be a negative number. I can sum it up very easily. We were at a shooting range, his gun jammed, he looked down the barrel to see what was wrong. Hey, you know people have won Darwin Awards for this. I almost dated a girl who thought the sun and the moon were the same thing. I like how it says almost dated, like once you find that out, that's the deal breaker right there. A guy in my high school who was convinced that the Dutch had sore throats at night from their accent and language. I mean, if they do, I would expect the Germans would too. My freshman year roommate dropped a class because he wanted to play his PlayStation more. It put him below the minimum credit threshold for his scholarships, and his parents owed $40,000. See, some people will look at this and say, see, this is why you don't play video games, but I just say, this is why you don't pay for college. I'm sure that if I thought real hard, I could come up with something more stupid, but this story is pretty good. There was this receptionist at the veterinary office we had to take our dogs to over the years who argued with my dad about how to pronounce his own name. He went in to pick up some prescriptions, something for our dog Daisy, and this girl asked the typical name of dog, name of owner type questions. "We have it listed as Michelle, and you don't look like a Michelle," she says. My dad asks how it was spelled on the monitor, and sure enough it was spelled Michael, my dad's name. He said, "That says Michael, that's my name." And she argued with him about it. He had to get his driver's license out to show her, and even though she finally relented to let him pick up whatever it was that he was down there to pick up, she was adamant that my dad had been mispronouncing his own name for 50 plus years. The best part is Dad tells us the whole story and we think nothing of it till like 3 months later when my mom took the dog in for a checkup. The girl still thought the owner of the dog was Michelle, and that my mom must have been in a lesbian relationship. My mom gently corrected the lady that it was Michael, and again this girl was adamant that it was pronounced Michelle. So Mom, bemused, said something along the lines of, "It's literally a name from the Bible. It's pronounced Michael and has been for thousands of years." The receptionist sat in silence outside of the minimal amount of talking needed for the rest of the visit. You know, I'll just come out and say I don't like the name Michael very much. I mean, it's okay to say, but whenever I have to spell it, it's like this person said, it just gets mixed up with way too many other names, and there's all these different silent letters that go into it. My ex-husband, we were playing rock, paper, scissors to decide who had to go change the baby, best 2 out of 3. So round 1, I throw scissors and he throws rock. "I win," he proclaimed. Round 2, I throw paper and he throws rock. "I win," he says again. Paper beats rock," I tell him. His response? "No, rock beats everything." I spend like 5 minutes trying to wrap my mind around this. Finally I ask him, "Then what's the point of even playing?" In total sincerity, he says, "To have fun." Yeah, I feel like that version of the game might need a few balance updates. The first time I ever met my future sister-in-law, she asked me, "If you're Canadian, how come you speak American?" She was 20 at the time. Yeah, you always have to be careful. You never know if somebody you're talking to could actually be a Canadian in disguise. My mom's cousin was the getaway driver when his friends held up a 7-Eleven. He had some outstanding tickets at the time. As he was driving his moron friends him home, he sped past a cop, who inevitably pulled him over. He defended his bad driving by telling the cop he was just the getaway driver. Then he got arrested. He has since been arrested for a series of other similarly stupid crimes. You know, sometimes I think that if people get locked up, that's probably the best thing that ever happened to them. I once called an Uber driver. When he arrived, he immediately asked me, "Are you going to X location?" I said, "No." He responded, "Great, because I'm not going to take you to X location." "Fine," I said. The journey got underway, and I was curious as to what he would have done if I had said that, yes, I wanted to go to X location. So I asked him, "Hey, what would you have done if I had said that I did want to go there?" He responded, "Look man, I'm not going to friggin' take you to X location, okay? I told you already." I was a bit befuddled, but I tried again. No, I don't want to go there. In fact, you already know where I want to go. It's on your destination map. I'm just curious, what if I did want to go there? Would you have refused me the trip? Would you have driven off? He said, "Look man, I can't change the trip now. And anyway, I told you I refused to go to X location. You gotta understand, I'm busy." We spent nearly 15 minutes with the variations of this back and forth. He was a fluent English speaker, by the way. By the end of it, I was 100% convinced that he couldn't understand the syntax of the hypothetical. He literally couldn't understand the question, if a situation which is not the case, then what action would you take? I wasn't even mad, just astonished. How had he navigated through life thus far? What were his financial decisions like? I really wanted to follow him home and make a reality TV show about him or something. You know, I've read a lot of stories on this channel where I would call somebody an NPC, but I think this one really takes the cake. I had a manager named Roxanne, or Rocky. She was a bleach blonde, literally bleached her hair once a month, and then wondered why it broke and fell out. A bubblehead who only had the one job because Daddy owned the restaurant. Rocky was really obsessed with her looks and not much else. One day she told me and a coworker that she had her nose job done so that her eventual children would grow up with the same nose as her. She wasn't kidding. The coworker and I just looked at each other and walked away. We knew it wasn't worth the effort. Yeah, when you're getting plastic surgery, you gotta pay extra to have them change your DNA along with it. The guy stole a bike. Cop stopped him and asked where he got it. He said he stole it. Yeah, well, sometimes coming up with a lie is just too much work. When I was in the military, we had to halt a convoy due to a broken down truck. So I was standing around with a few others for security when I hear a driver behind us yelling for his squad leader. Looking to see what he needed, I observed thick smoke billowing from his truck. He keeps yelling, "Hey, my truck is on fire!" without getting out of his seat and attempting to extinguish the fire or remove the weapons, ammo, and sensitive electronics. I was dumbfounded. You know, I've never been in the military, but I think that when you get so used to just having to follow orders and only doing exactly what you're told for everything, like anytime something doesn't really go according to plan, it can be hard to readjust your brain to actually know what you're doing again. I mean, I'm sure most people can handle it, but obviously it doesn't work on some. There was this guy at my high school that wasn't too bright and was mostly harmless, but about halfway through decided he was gonna be a thug. One day he goes into a class of first years when their teacher wasn't there and robs all their electronics, cash and valuables at knife point without covering his face, and before he left, gave them his real name saying, "And you better not tell them it was me, Jim Conrad, that stole all your stuff." He then proceeded to leave school grounds with all the stolen stuff, but decides against stashing it off campus, and so came back with all the stolen stuff in his backpack, and went to spy on the class with his backpack full of loot while police officers were there taking statements to make sure they weren't ratting him out. Oh man, this sounds like if a movie character escaped a movie and then tried to do movie stuff but while in real life. I helped a client out to his car with some merchandise. He struggled for a bit to get into his vehicle. I jokingly asked if it was his car. He backed up, looked at it and said, "Nope, no, this is not my car," and went to a different color and make of car in the lot. There were only 3 cars in the whole lot. Oh wow, you have to be really out of it to just straight up open somebody's car door and start getting in, and it takes you that long to realize it's not your car. A guy I worked with named Buddy bought a huge Snap-on roll-away toolbox for over $3,000 on credit. 2 days later, he sold it to a coworker for $1,500 because he had some overdue bills and had to pay them. Needless to say, he never paid Snap-on for the toolbox. He was off into the winds after he was fired for starting his 4th fistfight at work. One of the other guys I worked with told the Snap-on salesman where Buddy's new job was, and last I heard, they are now garnishing his wages. The guy was a nutcase though. He had very thin skin, and the slightest thing would set him off. He'd go absolutely nuts when he was set off though. He yelled at the security guard and threatened to have him fired because he didn't like his tone. He almost got fired 3 times for fighting, but he was able to win the department manager over until the 4th time. Oh, and one time he was told to put the caution tape across the malfunctioning gate, and he said, "I don't know how." Based on the evidence of these stories, I'm gonna have to diagnose this guy as just being a crackhead. My friend's father robbed a bank in a small town in Indiana where he lived. This was in the late 70s or early 80s. He spent 10 years in prison for the crime. The same day he was released from prison, he robbed the same bank again. He was caught, and back to prison he goes. He did not learn in those 10 years not to rob any banks or anything in that matter. My friend was like, "This is what every father does," and did not seem shocked over it. Well, I hope he spent the next 10 years in prison planning how he would do it better next time. I worked on a hay press for about a month. Most guys had high school education. One particular guy was telling me about a girl he was talking to on Tinder, or some various dating app, when he said that she was in New York and that he wanted to go visit her. I told him that's pretty cool, and New York will be quite the change for our little town. He then asked me how close New York was. We were in Washington State. He had no idea New York was over 2,000 miles away. I mean, to be honest, I think long-distance dating is kind of just a waste in a lot of ways, because just think of all of the people that are potentially as good or better than the person you're going to see, and you're just driving past all of them on the way over. I worked for a small retailer, and we had that guy for a while. He would call every day and ask the same questions, and no, not in different ways or something that could be constructed as clever. This same person also couldn't figure out the key fob for his own car and had to have his 5-year-old daughter let him into his own car. He had kids, let that sink in for a second. He's incapable of basic math besides addition and subtraction. We buy stuff, and when we tell him he gets 30%, he didn't understand what that meant. He also asks every time how much he's getting, despite not understanding the answer. I'm not sure he actually knows how to drive. We have a dumpster in our parking lot, and he manages to bump it every time with his car. Every time he leaves, we have to go move it because he hits it on the way in and out. Back to the fact that he's a father somehow. He's also an awful parent. We have witnessed him telling his kids that they are worthless and terrible, stupid, dumb, and any number of insults that are more applicable to himself. Unfortunately, that's not something we can report to CPS. I have watched him, on more than one occasion, fail to open the door to the bathroom and simply walk into it face first. He once came in with a hamburger of some kind, and while eating it, pulled a packet of mustard out of his pocket. He did not put the mustard on his burger. He instead bit into the packet and sucked the mustard out. I could keep going. One time he left his daughter in the car, and she locked herself out with the key inside. Instead of walking 2 buildings down to the car repair place, he took a rock and broke the driver's side window. Our store has both publicly accessible web page for making orders from home as well as in-store kiosks. Despite him owning a modern Android smartphone, one using it to look up food, he claims he doesn't have internet to use our website from home. So his wife, or girlfriend, I don't know, calls him just about every time he's in, and he lies to her every time saying he's on his way home, and that he's stuck in traffic. As many of you might have guessed, he's not particularly well groomed, although he usually has something in his hair. What that something is, I'm not sure. Well, this guy may have issues, but he sounds like he's a real big fan of your store if he comes into it every single day. I have a friend named Rachel. Now this one night in high school, we all got the munchies and decided to go get ourselves some late night Sonic. We pile into Rachel's car, even though we've heard stories about her bad driving, but that's another story. Anyway, she asks us how to get to Sonic, and we proceed to give her directions, turn for turn, until we finally pull into the Sonic parking lot. Upon our arrival, she smirks and says, "Oh, I work here." Yeah, well, sometimes, you know, the company that you go to work for every single day, you just forget the name of it. My high school classmate, whose name is Nick, we were in chemistry doing a lab practical, which required the use of a bulb pipette. Nick didn't know how to use the pipette, so he put it in his mouth to suck up sulfuric acid. It was about 3/4 of the way up before our teacher screamed, "Nick, stop that right now!" But you know, when it comes to IQ distribution, it's shaped in a bell curve, so most people are average, but that also means that for every person that's a genius, there's a person that's an idiot. And so for every person that's got 130 IQ, there's somebody with 70. And the world record for the smartest person ever was somewhere around 200. So I guess that means that maybe there's been somebody out there with an IQ of 0. But anyways, hopefully this video makes you feel better about yourself. I know that's why most people watch it, but I'll see you Friday.